Dr. Dipti Desai, and it is my privilege to introduce our next speaker, Sandy Carter. Sandy is widely known to many throughout the Thai ecosystem. She has supported Thai in so many different ways that we even have a Thai name for her, Sandhya Carter. Sandy Carter is the Vice President, Global Partners and Programs at AWS. She's focused on driving the next generation partnering to grow the AWS partner ecosystem in the public sector. Prior to this role, Sandy was the Vice President of Enterprise Workloads at AWS. Recognized as one of the most influential and powerful women in technology, Sandy has received a number of accolades, which if I had to list would take up the next 20 minutes. She's a Forbes digital influencer and CNN's top 10 most powerful women in tech. She has been awarded 25 plus social media awards. That's no surprise. She's a board member of Girls in Tech and WITI, Women in Technology International. She's an amazing speaker, as you will see, and has spoken at international conferences in 80 plus countries. Sandy has been quoted in numerous prominent media, including the likes of the Wall Street Journal and also our very own Thai media. She's an author of multiple bestsellers, and her latest ebook, Geek Girls Are Chic, was featured in the USA Today. There's a lot more to know about her, and her detailed biodata is on our website for your perusal. We are honored to have Sandy as our keynote speaker today, so please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Sandy Carter.
So thank you very much to Thai for having me here and Dipti for inviting me. I am so excited to be back at Thai, even though we are virtual. We have a great program today. We're going to be whipping through it because we've got 20 minutes to talk about the top trends to watch in 2021 for cloud. I've also included my Twitter handle at the bottom, Sandy_Carter. If you have questions, because there are no Q&As here, ask me, but tag me with that Twitter handle, and I'll make sure I get back to you, or send me a question via LinkedIn. I also wanted to say a big thank you, because I know all of us are working from home today, and we're all trying to be safe. We're all trying to ensure that we're wearing our masks so that we can get through this to the new normal. I know that humor often helps in times like these, so I really love this cartoon that says, I can't remember, do I work at home or do I live at work? Regardless of where you are, I'm so thrilled that you took the time out of your day today, Zooming everywhere, to listen to this session. I hope I won't disappoint you. So as we're looking at what's happening today, one of the sources I went to for some of the trends was Gartner. And as we think about the cloud, we know the cloud is bigger than just an infrastructure play. And here, if you look at Gartner, they have 3 major technologies right up front. Cloud, of course, as an enabler, data and analytics coming in as number 2, and number 1 as a game changer for your organization is around artificial intelligence. So then I also took that data and I looked at what our customers were doing as well. And our customers have the same outlook. Of course, cloud really embellishes everything. It's what enables analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence to work. And the data that comes in from IoT and other sources is the fuel that fuels the analytics and the machine learning and artificial intelligence. In fact, very recently, I just heard a comment that someone said that data is now the new soil, not the new oil, but the new soil, because everything grows out of the data. So I love that. So as I go through my trends today, I will be talking about the cloud and what we're seeing as new trends in the cloud. But of course, then we'll also discuss the new trends around how AI and ML in the cloud is working, how IoT data and analytics in the cloud is also driving change. So with that as our backdrop, hang on, let's get ready to go through what I consider the 4 big trends that I'm seeing around cloud today. Now, number 1 may or may not be a surprise to you, but it's about how many customers we're seeing migrate to the cloud. Before COVID, I would say we had a good portion of customers who were looking at the cloud and were making their 1 year, 2 year, 3 year plans to move to the cloud. But given COVID and the pandemic, plus all the other crises that went along with that, we have found that many companies, many states, many organizations have accelerated their journey to the cloud. Take, for instance, a couple of states who had call centers that were in place. When COVID hit, they had 6 to 8 hours worth of wait times. People were waiting on the phone to get answers to their questions. And of course, they had to accelerate their 1, 2, 3 year movements to the cloud because they needed to be able to solve that problem right away. So what I've seen in terms of migration to the cloud is, one, a great trend to more and more companies, customers, agencies, states, governments migrating to the cloud. The prime reason is the agility. I just talked through the ability to scale up and scale down, like the example I gave you for states, but just the agility in making business decisions. Customers from all over the globe are seeing that, especially during a crisis. The ability to move quickly, to move in a scrappy fashion, to move agilely really makes a big difference. The second thing that we're also seeing, though, is around security. I found this data the other day. It's from a report. The data actually comes from the FBI. And they found during the pandemic, security attacks actually increased, and not by a small number, 400%. So companies are also looking to migrate to the cloud to have better security. I know. Initially when people were moving to the cloud, people were questioning the security, but I think that's all past us now. The cloud has put security as job number one. For example, I work at Amazon Web Services, and it's something that we take very seriously. Let's take a look at one of our customers just to give you the impact of it. And I chose a customer that was outside of the US. So this is the National Department of Health in South Africa. They have 43 million people who depend upon public health to get their medications. Of course, with the pandemic, that really overburdened the facilities. They found there weren't enough pharmacists and pharmacies that were available. So our partner, Right to Care, came to the table with a kiosk. Really smart, right? They could load up about 2 months worth of medications in under 3 minutes, get it into the kiosk and have it available for multiple different sources. But of course, they could not do that without top-notch security. And so they were trying to protect not only the patient security that exists, but also the company that was delivering those medications as well. This was 100%, no question, going to be done in the cloud on AWS because security matters. We're seeing that as a big trend even grow as we continue in the pandemic. And then, of course, if we think about trends around the cloud, we also found a trend where people weren't just looking at migrating everything over to the cloud. They were looking at how they migrated over to the cloud. So most companies were saying, what are my table stake applications? Low rate of change, but business critical. And what were my commodity applications? Having non-business critical data, standard availability required. The migration path for each of those was quite different. Also, I find fascinating that about 30% of customers' applications are in that table stakes, about 70 in that commodity area. And the migration paths were different. Some would choose a SaaS path, some were completely rehosting, building it in on Linux, and some were replatforming as they went along. So I found this another interesting trend. As you migrate, it wasn't a one size fits all. As you're considering your agility and your security, they were very careful to say, how am I going to get that application, that workload over to the cloud? And then last but not least on this trend, people. As we all know, people and teams, that's what really makes the difference, right? I mean, think about your teams now working from home. You need those teams and they need to be sharp and ready to go. So as companies were migrating to the cloud during the pandemic, many people were working from home. So they needed a cloud training plan. Cloud skills came up as another really big area of focus. Most companies realized that they had the people that they needed already in-house. Take, for example, Capital One. they did a year-long training program earlier, and they trained their teams on cloud from senior executives all the way down. Training right can really help you reach your goals earlier. And so many companies like AWS have put their training online as well. Also, we found that many companies were following a best practice, which is creation of a cloud tiger team or a center of excellence, COE, that enabled them to have a resource as those people were up and learning the cloud. The bottom line is we had more customers migrate to the cloud and say, wow, why didn't I do this sooner? And teams who were working on the cloud saying, wow, this is not as hard as I thought. So I think if there was a silver lining to what we're going through, more companies are being driven to the cloud, but they're seeing the advantage, and it'll be a long-term advantage, not a short-term advantage. So let's go on to our trend number two. In addition to more and more customers now migrating to the cloud, we found that data was being recognized as being essential in this area. We talk about essential workers during COVID. We talk about essential businesses, but we also need to talk about essential data. Companies, countries, cities, everybody around the world recognize that unless they have the right information that's coming in either from IoT sensors and analyzing that data, they couldn't make good decisions. So for example, we had hospitals looking to make sure that they got masks to the right place, medicine to the right place. If you don't have good data, you can't make sure that that supply chain is correct. Countries looking at their food supply. How can I get food to the right place at the right time? You need data to do that. And so I think the trend we realized was that a lot of companies, a lot of countries, cities, governments did not have a data strategy. And so what we're seeing now is a lot of companies coming back saying, I've got to define a data strategy. I've got to be fast. I've got to be agile. I've got to get in there, but I need a data strategy. This is really important, I believe, because a lot of companies would come in previously to the EBC and all they would want to talk about is artificial intelligence and machine learning. I understand that. That's really sexy, really cool. But until you have a great data strategy, you won't be successful with machine learning and AI. And so as we have been maturing over this pandemic, over the time of COVID, we were really able to illustrate that a company that wants a machine learning strategy had to have a data strategy. A company who really wanted to excel during this time and innovate needed a data strategy. Now, if you need a data strategy, part of what you have to consider is obviously the data quality, the data quantity, and the data source. Any one of those three things could really trip up the way that you leverage the data and the results that you received from that data. So we had a lot of companies who were ahead of the game. For example, Electronic Care, one of our partners here, had been working on collecting data on how to really help the elderly in their healthcare experience. We here in the United States have many, many more people that are going through that aging process. So they started early working with New Mexico State to gather information about how they could help the elderly, how they could help them with prescriptions, taking temperature, and really helping them to mitigate the risk of a fall. So for example, collection of data. They had a sensor pad. People would walk on the sensor pad so you could get a feel for their gait and for how different people fell. Like women typically fall forward, men typically fall backwards. All of that information, all of that data was fed into their artificial intelligence systems to learn, analytics to provide the right data. What a perfect time too. You can see here they've delivered Addison, which is an AR capable health virtual assistant that can provide that personalized monitored system. But it all started with the data. It didn't start with artificial intelligence. Now, the other trend we're seeing around data is the quality and quantity of data that is being grown significantly because of IoT. IDC recently published that since the start of COVID, IoT has gone up by 400%. And in fact, even things like smart cities are going to add another $190 billion through the use of IT sensors. Why? Well, it kind of makes sense, right? You're in COVID, you've got work from home. How do you get access to information so you can do your maintenance or the temperature in a building? Sensors, billions of devices out there can help you make those better business decisions. And so the trend that we found on data was that IoT had been accelerating in the cloud. So this is another example of a great partner of ours, which is Saildrone. They have interesting ways to collect data. They're looking for data about the sea, about the air, about different surface areas. So instead of sending people out, they have unmanned surface vehicles, sometimes drones. Those drones go into the South Pacific, they go into Antarctica, and they gather up just different samples of data, 289 million different types of samples. They use different instrumentations to measure everything and then provide a satellite streaming of those multiple data sources so that shipyards, weather stations can use that data to make better business decisions. We're going to start seeing this more and more. So let's go on to our trend 3, which is explainable AI. Of course, AI is done in the cloud. What do we mean by explainable AI though? Well, you're probably teaching your kids at home, and you probably know if they do their math and they get an answer, 126, that unless you show your work of how you got to that answer, the answer is not counted correctly. There's no trust in that answer. And that's what we're talking about with explainable AI. Can you show me how you got to your answer? Over 60% of executives today are looking for AI, not just to produce an answer, but to explain how they got there. I find that this is really important. The actions can be understood. It's not in a black box. People can now say, I can see because of this, this, and this is how that solution got there. This is how that recommendation was made. It's becoming more and more important. But let me give you a quick example, if I might. So healthcare obviously is using a lot of machine learning today. They develop models, they input data, and then they'll make maybe like a diagnosis for a human to look at. But if they look at a set of symptoms, weight, headache, no fatigue, and they say flu is the answer, without some of that input as to how they reach that answer, what they really look like, the human that's involved in that decision isn't going to trust it. It's not going to be used. We see this coming up more and more. The EU just declared that companies have to be able to show what's in that black box. For governance and for compliance, that has to be used, and it helps you to earn trust. So for example, one of our customers, DARPA, has been using AI a lot to make decisions. But one of the things they found was that people were saying, why did you do that? Why aren't you executing something else out of that particular set of artificial intelligence? How can I trust that that's right? And so they have now executed on an explainable AI strategy, where now they not only say, here's the answer, but here's how we reach the answer. So now people are comfortable understanding why and why not, and they know how the answer was derived. Okay, hold on to your seats because we've got one more trend, and that is also around artificial intelligence and machine learning, and it's reinforcement learning. Now, today, most learning has been done with tagging, which is very hard and very manual. But there is a better way, which is the way that we learn, which is through reinforcement. So for example, if I didn't eat my green beans, my mom didn't give me dessert. Wow, I learned because I had an observation, I took an action, and it didn't result in a reward, or it did. It caused me to change my behavior. That's what we're looking at with reinforcement learning. For example, with AWS, we've released a Deep Racer. Now, Deep Racer is so fun. It's a car. It's 1/18 the size of a real car. Has sensors all around it. So as you go on the track, it tells you data. Here's your speed. Here's how you're doing in terms of being inside the lines or outside of the lines. With reinforcement learning, then you can apply that reward system for how you're doing. Many companies like DBS have set up their entire reinforcement training for AI and ML using Deep Racer. So as we think about it, the promises for reinforcement learning are many, but probably one of the biggest ones that we see as a big trend is the ability to solve dynamic problems. We're not just looking at recognizing a picture and saying, is this spaghetti or not spaghetti, which is consistent. but my problem might change dynamically. I'm going to show you an example here in a minute of a dynamic problem for Mars. Now, reinforcement learning is applicable to every industry. You can see many here: autonomous vehicles, operations research, and robots. For example, RumiBot, which is a robot that's being used right now in Mexico by our partner Rumi IT, actually uses sensors and reinforcement learning to ask the right questions. Are you short of breath? What's your temperature? How are you feeling? This is a great example of using reinforcement learning inside of a robot. But one of my very favorites is around Mars. Everybody wants to go to Mars, right? So we've got this bot that we partnered on with JPL, NASA, and AWS. We created this contest to say, could we use reinforcement learning and gather the help of the crowd to help teach this bot to be able to go over rocks or whatever they may find on Mars? It's fascinating. And I will tell you that, the use of reinforcement learning is great. Okay, for our last slide, future-proof your organization. Know, one, that security is important and crucial. It is a big trend in the cloud. 2, data is coming at you from everywhere. You must have a data strategy. And 3, even though we love the technology, please don't forget about your teams. Now data is coming at you in real time. It's not taking 3 weeks. How do your teams have to adapt to that? What additional training do you need today? Again, I want to thank Ty for having me here today. And if you're sitting there in the audience, my message to you finally is, don't overanalyze it. In today's economy, in today's COVID, today's new normal, get started, get going. And if I can be of any help to you, I would gladly assist in any way I can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandy, for your time. That was very educational and informative for our audience. The next session in this track is on the business of cloud computing. So you can stay back here and listen to the panel, or you can go visit other tracks that are going on in parallel right now.